want to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming out to the Dworkin and Bernstein Management Lecture Series tonight. I appreciate your coming out. It's going to be a very interesting talk tonight, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. I want to introduce our speaker, David Schell, he's the Executive Director of Breckenridge Village. And so if you've driven through Willoughby, you may very well have seen the facility there. Mr. Schell began working as the Executive Director of Breckenridge Village in 1987, so he's been there 28 years. Breckenridge Village is a member of the Ohio Presbyterian Retirement Services, and Mr. Schell is the Regional Vice President of Operations, assisting in operational oversight and planning in support of the organization's mission. Under his leadership, the operations of Breckenridge have received numerous awards and recognition, including accreditation, Business of the Year awards, and consistently high survey results and satisfaction scores. He shares his service with many other dedicated professionals on the staff who also believe in the pursuit of excellence in older adult and other related services. He has played an integral role in the fundraising activities for Breckenridge Village, including a successful capital campaign that raised a record $7.3 million. As a result, Breckenridge Village benefits from expanded nursing care, assisted living, a new cultural arts center, and a wellness and fitness center. Mr. Schell is a graduate of Ferris State University in Big Rapids, Michigan, with a bachelor's degree in health services management, and he also holds a master's degree in business administration from Grand Valley State University in Ada, Michigan. In addition, he is a licensed nursing home administrator in Ohio and Michigan. He lives in Chardon with his wife Annette, who's with us tonight, and they have 2 children. So would you please join me in welcoming David Schell, Executive Director of Breckenridge Village.
Thank you. Boy, a wonderful introduction. It's great to be with you all, and particularly the students in the philosophy and management program. I think it's great to be able to have the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with all of you. I've spent most of my career working with those at the early phases of life, those in kind of the shadows of life, and those that are in retirement and moving towards the end of life. Breckenridge Village is one of the nation's largest retirement communities, and I'll talk about Breckenridge Village a little bit later. But I was asked to talk a little bit about myself, which is something that I'm not too accustomed to doing. But I'll share some of the influences. As Annette and I were talking, I think so many of the things that you go through your life really play an influence on how you manage, how you go through your work life. The first 10 years of my life were pretty idyllic, and then 13 days before my 11th birthday, my father passed away from a massive heart attack. Ironically, about 15 years later, the Cleveland Clinic would have repaired his heart valve with outpatient surgery. So timing in life has a little bit to do with many things. My mother was probably one of the most capable people that I have ever known and had the good fortune to have as a mother. My grandmother, another one of those incredible role models. There were 3 of us. We were 10, 14, and 16 when my dad died, and we joked that my mother earned every gray hair on her head 3 times over. I graduated from Kenston High School. I'm a product of Northeast Ohio, and after high school, during high school, I had a number of odd jobs. I think another result of some of the necessity and need, and worked at a dairy farm, laborer. I had the good opportunity to work at Chagrin Falls Airport. I soloed at the age of 16. I'll never forget that Don Hine, who ran the airport, said, "I need a note from your mother that says that you can solo." And so I went home and I said, "Mom, Don needs a letter from you." And had a great opportunity doing some of those jobs. I chose to go to school up in Michigan. Ferris State University was a wonderful school, had a great allied health program. Wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but knew that I wanted to do healthcare, knew I wanted to do something of worthwhile endeavor, and also business. So that was an important part of my life at that point in time. I had a wonderful mentor in college. I'll talk about mentors quite a bit tonight, but he was the professor of my program. John Booth was his name, and encouraged me in a lot of different areas to pursue studies, area of interest, things that he felt that were going to be important in my future career. As a result of that, I did my administrative residency at Reed City Hospital in Reed City, Michigan, and met another great mentor. Henry Irwin was his name, and he gave me a very special project to do, which was a feasibility study to expand the hospital, which was something pretty unusual for a student to do. And as a result, had the chance to meet with all the department heads, the medical leadership, and really encouraged me to step outside of my box and do something that I felt was worthwhile and important. And his mentorship and encouragement did a lot. One of the other great things that occurred in college was that Annette and I married after my junior year in college. And she worked at Hush Puppies Wolverine Worldwide doing piece rate, sewing shoes. Kept us in married housing, and kept us going through school. And so those purposeful, driven women in my lives made a huge difference with my mother, my grandmother, and my wife Annette. Annette's a glass artisan. It's always wonderful to have a supportive partner, and I hope through your life that you find someone that is as supportive of your initiatives as hopefully you will be in theirs. She's a glass artisan. I always joke at Breckenridge that the last piece of paper or something that I did after about 2 years will be forgotten, and a piece of her stained glass will come out of a church or a business or a home 150 years later, and someone will look at the initials and that creative art and work, and they'll say, I wonder who that person was that made that. And her life and her work with supporting my work has been just absolutely phenomenal. I've had the misfortune, which is going to be similar to some of you, of getting out of college and school at about the wrong time. It was the downturn of the economy when I got out of college, and we had to get out of married housing. I think Annette and I had $450 in savings and no job. It was at the time of the Hill-Burton funding for hospitals, and the Hill-Burton funded all the little regional hospitals that we see in all the small towns around the country. And Hill-Burton funding had run out, the economy was pretty poor, and the only job that I could get was working at the state hospital system in Cambridge, Ohio. 800 beds of psychiatric, receiving, mental health, and developmentally disabled, dual diagnosis. I had absolutely no experience in any of the above. Annette and I moved from Michigan down to Cambridge, Ohio. I showed up for the job, and that day they said that the funding fell through for the job that I was to take, and I didn't have a job. Said, we have absolutely no money. We just signed a lease for a year, and we were wondering what we could do, and they offered that if you come back for the next couple of days, we'll see if we can find you something. The job that they gave me 2 days later was the unit manager for the developmentally disabled, the mentally retarded, as they said at that time. Severely and profoundly retarded individuals that were probably some of the most institutional human beings I've ever seen in my life. Most did not wear clothes. They had virtually no social interaction with many people. And I had no idea what to do. So I went back and I started talking to the nurses, to the doctors, social workers and the staff, and said, how do we take care of these people? How do we provide some type of a humane environment? And I took all of their ideas and started to put them to work. We made a huge difference in the lives of many of those individuals, I'm happy to say. And that following year, I was awarded the state's Unit Manager of the Year award for some of the work that we were doing. The most profound experience that I walked away from that job was that this is not the best body or this is not the best mind, but this is the God-given body that I have and the mind that I have, and I'm going to try to take pretty good care of this vessel because it's the only one I'm going to have for my entire life, and I'm going to try to do as much as I can with this mind to continue to do the work for all of those individuals that really never had an opportunity, those in the shadows of life. And you start to realize that some of the things that impact your life is just happenstance. It's a cosmic piece of dust that you were given the bodies that you have, the minds that you have, the creativity that's instilled in those minds, and the opportunity to do that. And there are tens of thousands of people in our country that will never have that opportunity. There are millions, if not billions, of people in this country, in this world that will never have the opportunity to do that. And that's something that you possess innately, and it should serve you well as you travel and work throughout your life. I knew early on that working with the developmentally disabled and those that were mental health and institutionalized, pretty hard work. For those of you that consider going into that work, bless your hearts. It's demanding work and very challenging work. Most worthwhile. And I thought that it was time to kind of move into another endeavor. I wound up taking a job with the nation's largest for-profit corporation providing long-term care services in the country. At the time, they owned about 800 healthcare facilities around the country. Now at 25 years old, or I guess I was about 27 at the time, that's pretty cool. They flew corporate jets and they did all kinds of neat things. But the number one goal was to maximize the shareholders' wealth, to make a buck off of what you were doing. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of people that do it very honorably, but they learned how to do it to an art. And it went at the cost of providing care, and it went on the backs of the employees that were providing the work. And I knew early into that it was probably not something that I wanted to continue to do. Wound up with another mentor, an individual by the name of Jerry Postman. He was working for a not-for-profit corporation. Now, if you're thinking about healthcare, about 18% of the organizations in our country are not-for-profit. That doesn't mean that they don't make a profit, but they are putting the resources that they make in a profit back into the buildings. There are no shareholders, stakeholders, or owners. And about 80% of the organizations out there providing health care are for-profit in the long-term care field. And so Jerry was working for a not-for-profit organization. He said, we're looking for someone to help us with one of their projects. And he said, I've recommended your name to the board to do that because I've watched some of the work that you've done. I was hired by the board, and about a year later, Jerry came to me and he said, my MS is out of remission, and I'm going to resign my position, and I made the recommendation that you be hired as the president and the administrator of the organization. I was 28 years old. And I said they will never hire me for that position, and lo and behold, I was selected for the position. Interesting, I was doing my MBA at the time, another mentor, my finance professor. The organization was having catastrophic cash flow problems. Now back in that day, this is maybe hard for you to realize, but interest rates were about 13, 14, 15%. Construction loans were 1.25% over prime, and it was about 17%. Needless to say, the organization was hemorrhaging cash. And it was an organization that started in 1945 and was very close to filing Chapter 11. And I went to my finance professor and I said, I'm clueless as to what to do. Do you have any ideas? And my finance professor, he said, working on one of your projects, why don't we use this as one of the exercises we want you to go through? Could not find any financing in the country, found financing through the Great Northwest Life Insurance Company out of Manitoba, Canada. Again, another resource that I would have never thought of, and he helped that organization through very challenging times. I could have stayed there forever, but I found out about an organization by the name of Breckenridge Village in Willoughby, Ohio. Annette and I never, ever in a million years thought that we would return to Northeast Ohio. We always thought that we would leave Northeast Ohio and we'd go our merry way in a lot of different areas. But as our boys started to grow and develop, we thought it important to get back to the roots of our family. And so I put my name in the ring for the executive director of Breckenridge Village, and I was hired as the executive director, and at that time I was 32 years old, and we moved back to Cleveland. Breckenridge is a great not-for-profit organization. I'm going to start to scroll through a couple of things here if I can. And when I started, it was a gift by a lady by the name of Beatrice Breckenridge Waugh, who donated 18 acres of property to the organization. And over the last 28 years, we've grown tremendously. There are now over 750 residents on the campus, all different levels of care. We employ about 455 employees. Our home and community-based arm is called Senior Independence. We provide home care, adult daycare, and also hospice care. We touch annually about 8,800 lives throughout the year, not only as residents, but outpatient therapy, inpatient rehab therapy, home and community-based services. Our youngest participant in the program is 6 weeks of age. Our oldest resident is 104 years of age. The residents living on the campus range between 58 and 104. The oldest person that I ever knew that lived at Breckenridge moved in when it opened up, and she passed away 1 month shy of 108 years of age. Her roommate was just a few months shy of 107. She was born and raised in Hamden Township, and lived through the end of the 1800s, throughout the 1900s, into the year 2000. And so it is that it's somewhat interesting that I start talking about a retirement community with a child care center. And I think in a lot of the innovation, what we've looked at, 80% of the employees that work at Breckenridge are females. And the vast majority of the staff that work there are younger staff, and they're single parents, and they're dealing with children. And when we started to look at needs of the staff, you always find that there's a huge correlation between quality of care and quality of staff. Makes sense, doesn't it? You have good people providing a caring service to individuals, and the return is going to be good. So we started to look at starting a child care facility, and it was the first one in Lake County, and it opened in 1995. I'm able to keep and retain a lot of great staff, great intergenerational programs. And if you know anything about early childhood development, which I learned from one of the professors here that helped start the program at Breckenridge, was that most of the indelible mark on youth is going to happen in the first 5 years of age. And making an implant on individuals during that critical developmental period makes a huge difference in their learning over time. So we may not be able to make too many changes, but it's a drop in the bucket that is an extremely important drop in the bucket. We embarked on a strategic plan 10 years ago. Again, in the business models, if you look at growth curves of organization, you'll see startup, growth and development, and then maturity, and then many organizations at the end of the maturity curve start to decline and go downhill. So all of you that are involved in business and looking at growth and development models of businesses will start to think about how you sustain and grow that organization. So we embarked on a strategic plan, and we've invested about $42 million in the region in the last 10 years. We opened up the Brownstone, our first independent endeavor, in 2008. And if you start to look at some of these timelines, this was the very beginning of our growth curve. And in August of 2008, we signed the commitment papers for Grace Woods, a large development on 16 acres across from the main 32-acre campus on Breckenridge. And it was about a $29 million endeavor. So if you think that in October of 2008, the economy suffered and tanked precipitously, and we were launching one of the biggest projects in the history of the organization. I'm happy to say that it's been successful. That $7.3 million campaign, we raised monies for the Mahan Cultural Arts Center. We look at the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of individuals. And that learning curve of residents and the creativity, it never stops. It doesn't matter what age. I think there's always a desire to continue to learn, engage in arts, music. I worked with an individual by the name of Mr. Tinkham Veal. That name might be familiar. He's Case Western Reserve, was Case Western Reserve University's largest donor. A phenomenal entrepreneur of a venture capitalist that donated, I think his total giving to Cases during his lifetime was about $50 million. And Mr. Veal helped us with the Veal Wellness and Aquatic Center. And we were looking at how we refined the therapy components of outpatient therapy, inpatient therapy, aquatic classes, and how to maintain the quality of life over a long period of time. And we utilize all kinds of services and technology to do that. And it has proved to be an incredible endeavor of ours. We expanded the Fairmount Health and Rehabilitation Center. If you look at our continuum, we started independent living. From independent living, we go to assisted living, outpatient, inpatient rehab, long-term care, dementia care, and assisted living in about 7 different levels of care. When the hospital was moving out of Lake East and building the new hospital in Concord, we acquired the rehab beds and expanded the rehab facilities on the campus. People always ask about spirituality and faith. We are a faith-based organization, and when I talk about our mission, we talk about that physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. It seems that through studies and research, social gerontologists will say that our spirituality increases and our faith increases. And I think as we get older, we start to question why we're on this earth. What are we doing? What is the purpose of our life on this earth? And so that spiritual component is very much a piece of our campus. Our final phase of Grace Woods opens in 2015. There'll be 132 suites in that area. The project is 95% occupied. The campus enjoys that same occupancy, and it has been an extremely incredible project to work on. I wanted to talk about how all of this has relevance to you. You've probably heard some of these numbers, but every day for the next 14 years, 10,000 baby boomers will turn the age of 65. 10,000 a day for the next 14 years. We are an aging society, as is Japan, Sweden, and a number of other societies, but ours is growing precipitously. In 2015, about 45% of the population will be 50 years or older. This is a map from Scripps Gerontology. The light yellow is a population density of 50 and older of between 15 and 20%. The darker yellow is 20 to 25%. The darkest orange is a penetration rate of 25 to 30%, and then the last penetration, that red, is 30 to 50% of the population over the age of 50. 2020. 2030. So if you look at those population densities, not too many in 2010 had a population density of 30 to 50%. And here's the state of Ohio in 2030. This is in the midst of all of your careers, smack dab in the middle of your careers. So it does not matter what you're doing in your career, older adults are going to be a piece of what you're doing, either as a product, a service, consumer. It virtually does not matter. And then this is the cover of Time magazine on March 2nd. This baby born today could live to be 142 years of age. When Miriam Brigham was born in 1899, let's see, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, pertussis, the diseases, polio, everything that she had to survive have all been eradicated. Your biotechnology degrees, the advances of medicine, non-invasive surgery, biomedics, the list goes on and on and on of what will extend our lives. It was thought that the end of biological life was somewhere around 125 to 130 years old, where the cells just finally reached a point where they could not regenerate and end of life occurred. But as we've worked with the genomes and the expansion of our understanding of medicine, we're able to push that envelope further and further. I can't even begin to comprehend. I knew a 108-year-old, but I cannot even begin to comprehend a 142-year-old. If you think about what that means on demands of society, work-life contributions to work, some of those in the shadows of life, and how that will impact your job, it's almost overwhelming. Our society, I always joke that aging is everyone's future. As we sit here, we've all moved a few seconds along towards the end of our lives. And each and every one of us are going to die, a simple part of life. We kind of deny all of that, but in reality, aging is everyone's future. And my hope is that every one of you reach as far as that 142 years as you possibly can. But as I mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're in marketing, manufacturing, nursing, allied health, technology, anything, you are going to be touched by older adults. It is going to be a fact of this society. I was talking to the manufacturer of one of the keypads. You're probably very familiar with it, Diebold, and they make the ATM machine. If you remember the early ATMs, how big were the numbers and the buttons and all of those things? Pretty small, you couldn't use it, you couldn't read the screen. They've adapted all of that technology for some of the issues that we start to deal with as we age. But I want you to remember one other thing, which I think is extremely important, and this is as important today as it is in your tomorrows to come, that successful aging is defined not by longevity, not by that 142 years, but the quality in those 142 years. It does not matter at all how long you live. It matters tremendously the quality of life along the way. 10 things that I've kind of learned. Find a mentor. And all of the students here in your field of study and all of your endeavors, I hope you find someone to help you along your path. I've been blessed with a lot of great mentors through my career, and I include Annette as one of those mentors along that path, but a lot of folks that help you along the way. Seek to build versus breaking down. So much of what we do is not looking at how we build a better mousetrap, but many times looking at the fault of all the things that come along. Seek collaborative solutions. I've often been fascinated that one of the management classes that I've taught through the years is from Special Forces, where they do a survival program. And I have every individual take the test of all of the items in that survival, that if you had to master this, what would you pick and what's the priority? The individuals will always score lower than the collective group. When the collective group, and it doesn't matter gender, it doesn't matter education, it doesn't matter whatever, 99% of the time the group will score better than the individual will score. And that fact reoccurs in all of the business experiences that I have had. Take risks and push your personal boundaries. If you're in your comfort zone, it's the wrong place to be. You need to step out of that comfort zone, and you need to expand your personal boundaries and really take risks. I always encourage a lot of young people, if you're gonna take a risk, do it young, when there's not quite so much that it seems to lose, and push those personal boundaries. You are captain of your own ship. The road that you're going to take is going to be set by yourself and no one else. There are going to be a few people in this world that have a great opportunity, and they'll capitalize on that opportunity. Most of the time, it's pretty hard work, and if you're not taking care of yourself, no one else will. we've been blessed with a couple of great kids, and our youngest son fell in love with a Canadian, and they live in Vancouver. It's a terrible place to go visit. We force ourselves to go do that, and our youngest son, by choice, went to a military academy, graduated, became a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, did 2 tours, 27 months in Iraq, and I often look at our son and say, you know, speaking about captain of your own ship, it's not anything that Annette and I thought that we would encourage a hawk along the way, but it was his passion, and he did it with great commitment and with great pride. And for that, I've watched him grow and develop in many different ways. Listen to opposing views and use them. I don't understand social media in the context of where mass opinion forms a collective right. And if you look at our politics today, and I have discussions with our politicians, that opposing views, it seems that we've become so demarcated by the lines of public, by the political spectrum, that we can't find common ground. I suggest that all of you find a way to utilize those opposing views and really think about those as how they might impact you and your work. Take good care of yourself, your body, and your mind. Someone that you probably have never heard of, a centurion by the name of George Burns, joked that if I had known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of my body. And this is the only vessel you have. There may be a pill to fix it, there may be some way to fix it, but the better care that you take of it today, the better it'll serve you over life. And this ain't a dress rehearsal. You've got one shot at this life. You're never going to be able to relive the last 10 minutes. I hope that half of them were fairly good. And today is pure gold, and you don't know how many tomorrows you really have. So understand that every single day truly is a gift, and use it to the best of your ability. And then one resident told me, if you want to live to be 100, live to be 99, and then be very, very careful. And I hope through your aging journey that you are enabled to take the pursuits, the things that you are most passionate about, and put them to use. Find a mission and live by that mission. Be tenacious to it and commit to it. Do everything you can in your mind, body, and soul to move that mission forward, and do it to the best of your abilities. And it has been a pleasure to be with this organization for the last 28 years. I truly am humbled to be with all of you. It's nice to do it and to spend a little bit of time, and I hope that there's pieces of this that you will find helpful, not only today, but in your tomorrows to come. And with that, I open it up to any questions that you have. I believe that there is a culture at Breckenridge Village that is extremely unique. They say that it starts at the top. I'm not so sure about that. I think I play a role or a piece of it. But the mission and the purpose, and I think one of the things we strive to do with all of the staff is to make them feel that the work that they're doing is extremely worthwhile, and they are doing good. And I'm encouraged by your generation. I love the millennials. I think that this generation does some things that I haven't seen in the last 10 or 15 years. For the most part, very altruistic, care very, very deeply about what they're doing, and they put their heart and soul into it. And that's a very, very healthy thing. I believe that the mission, I think being faith-based, I think taking care of their children, of realizing that there's a commitment back. The residents, every year, we don't allow tipping because we're concerned about the tipping policy. And so we allow a donation to be made to the employees every single year. And this last year, the residents gave $92,000 to be given to all of the employees. And that doesn't happen because there's not a relationship. That doesn't happen without a symbiotic relationship. And that has happened for the 28 years I've been there. Somewhere between $58,000 and $90,000 a year. Pretty incredible. Healthcare has a fairly high turnover rate. Ours, and this is going to sound like a shocking number to you, but ours is about 27%. And we count all turnover in that. We employ about 60 students from South High School that work as servers, so we include that number because we look at it that we've got to replace the position. We employ an awful lot of nursing students that go to school here and at Ursuline and in other colleges, and we know that that group's going to be with us for a long time unless they're a professional student for 12 or 14 years, and then they may be with us a little bit longer. Our nursing turnover, industry turnover for nurses, licensed nursing staff, is anywhere between 30 and 40%. Ours last year was 7%. And so we strive to try to maintain that stability, because quality of care and all of those systems are predicated on building stability. And that's a pretty hard thing to do in what we do. Yes, yes, and then there is probably about 20 to 25% of those that turn over where it's just not their cup of tea, and I understand that. I mean, it's not easy work, and you know, you tell people, I'm going to say this facetiously. Some of the residents are going to call me on this, but I have 700 of my parents and grandparents as my customer every single day. And it makes for an interesting work life sometimes, you know, and that's not everyone, and a lot of people can't deal with that. And some of the infirmity that happens, we were talking, some of your professors here I know very intimately because their parents are at Breckenridge, and I know the things that they are going through, and their losses. I mean, you know, our bodies start to decline. And there's challenges with that, and not everyone can deal with that. It takes a special person to do any work, so it is a calling, absolutely. But I think, too, that we've continued to do creative things. I was telling Dr. Beveridge at dinner that our next endeavor, he said, what's next? And I said, well, we're creating an innovation lab. And working with graduate students of Case Western Reserve, and I'd like to utilize the STEM students at the high school and students here at Lakeland, where we want to have a living lab where they are taking prototypes of products and designs that they're looking at developing, use our residents as some of the living lab to find out exactly what works and does not work, and how to put that into a business model for growth and development. Two examples of a couple of the graduate students down at Case. One is that there is not going to be enough bodies to take care of the baby boomers. There's 78 million of us, and there's not enough help to take care of it now. So it's going to be technology, high touch in the right areas, technology in all of the other areas. And they're looking at robotics that look at something without a skeleton. How does a caterpillar move, or a praying mantis? And so many of the robotics are not intuitive enough to take care of a human being. And so what they're looking at is how to create something that has the sensitivity and the touch and the sense of what to do at the right time. Another one does facial recognitions, and through analytics it looks at learning all of your behavior through facial recognition. And then if it starts to know something unusual, some sign of perhaps depression or stroke or a small TIA or something such as that, it triggers a signal that something's wrong. Gait sensations in the buildings, looking at the gait of the individual. Are their behaviors normal, or is something different? And it's those triggers of technology that are going to make a difference. So I think some of our continuation of looking at ideas and how to expand outpatient rehab and all of those things are reasons that people stay too. It's one of the reasons that I've stayed this long. You know, and that's, you know, and I hear a lot of people say, you know, well, you got to be a big player somehow in the technology field, and more stuff is done out of garages and out of the ideas of students. You know, there were some students at Rochester Institute of Technology that learned of a young person that could not afford a prosthesis, about a $30,000 to $50,000 prosthesis. And the students sat around probably with a few beers and said, how do we fix this? And through a 3D printer, they created a prosthesis for under $400. What does that mean for a few billion people out in the world that may not be able to afford a prosthesis? To me, that's, you know, there's a lot of opportunity that'll come out of this new age of an aging society and the demands in the world. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. You know, the question is, do we have our own pharmacy and do we go outside? And right now we go outside. I worked with a small group of not-for-profits. We formed a small company to buy our own pharmacy. We owned one for a while. I wish we would have hung on to it. No, it's not easy to own a pharmacy. Yes, you obviously have a little bit of a background in that. It's a real enigma. I still want to know what that pill costs. Yeah, and I know that the parent organization of Ohio Presbyterian Retirement Services is large enough to do one, and I know that there's investigation into that area. So it makes all the sense in the world. And as we get into bundled care and all kinds of other needs, you know how many, you know the average number of medications that a person over the age of 65 takes? Yeah, 9 to 12. Yep, it's incredible. And that's going to be another dilemma as we move forward with aging services. We're very proud that we serve a broad socioeconomic background. Our first building was a HUD building, low-income housing, and then it kind of goes through, and we've looked at models that looks at all of the niches in between affordability aspects from middle income to upper income, and we provide needs along all of those services. But one of the things, three things about this generation: they own their own home, they normally worked for a company for a long period of time, had a pension, and they were tenacious savers. Last would be adversity to debt. And that's something that we're not necessarily able to do. And that's going to be a challenge for society moving forward. One of the things that is unique about our organization, and thanks, that's a wonderful question, that unlike a lot of organizations, we have what's known as a life care commitment. And as long as someone financially qualifies, meaning that we know that they have generally about enough money to take care of themselves for life expectancy, that should they outlive those resources, no one has ever been asked to leave because of ability to pay. And that's pretty unique. It doesn't happen in too many locations. And so we provide philanthropic, gift-giving support to enable us to do that. Going through the various positions, a lot of mid-management jobs, and those that have administrative experience, some type of business management experience. Culinary services, we do a lot of chef-level work in those areas. Marketing, public relations, business office manager, billing, accounts receivables, payables. Those types of positions. Obviously, we've employed a lot of folks here in early childhood development that work in the child care. And so I will honestly say in long-term care, it is a pretty lean, mean operating machine. You know, there's not a whole lot of oversight in it. A lot of it is the hands-on care. So obviously nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, positions along the allied health field. You know, I will, if there is another life, I will find a job that does not go 24/7, 365 days a year. And that's the one downside of healthcare. It just never, ever shuts down. And that is a challenge for everyone that works in healthcare and those that have had experience in those areas. And that ain't going to go away. It isn't going to change any. Right now, about 60% of the children are employees' children, and about 40% are from the greater community. And it's open 12 hours a day, 6 to 6 is the hourly operation that we do. And we primarily, you know, I mean, very truthfully, we target a lot of the employees that are providing, you know, delivery of care and service, so that it's wonderful that they can come, drop off their child, and head to work, and it's a great benefit. And right now, I think there's 10 toddlers, and then 22 in the preschool. So there's about 42 children in the program. What we've been able to do, which I think is absolutely wonderful, the question is about affordability of childcare, which is another challenge in our country. And what we do is we do a sliding fee scale based on family income, and we were able to raise monies for an endowment that provides scholarships for the children in the program. And so that helps quite a bit. And particularly for some of what you would term the entry-level positions, affordable childcare is pretty tough. Yeah, pretty tough to get. Yeah, I don't know. We have a maintenance director. Their first children, and they had triplets. We're going to be figuring out how to do a deep discount as the triplets come through the process. Yeah. I would have dearly loved to have had a little bit more time to do some of the creative side of the work, and that's one of the problems of the 24/7. You get pulled back. I can honestly say that I could have made a heck of a lot more money working in the for-profit or changing jobs, and I've often wondered about that. That, you know, we've been able to do some things here that you would not be able to do unless you stayed for a long period of time. And I've often wrestled with that, because as you get closer to retirement, you say, it might have been nicer to make a few more bucks here and there. But I look back on my work at Breckenridge, and there's a couple of things that I tell people. So many people spend time worrying about the future. The residents teach you to live every day as the most precious day. And so you really work at that, and I think the quality of your life is better because of that. And I think a purpose-driven life, I think that there are a lot of people. I've never walked with someone towards the final phases of their life where they said, I wish I would have had a bigger career. I wish I would have made more money. I wish I would have bought that other company. Everyone will always talk about relationships. They will always talk about family. And they will always talk about never having enough time for those two. Do we have our own staff of doctors? No, we do not. We work with the Lake Health Systems, and we work with them on, we have a physician that's on the campus, and nurse practitioners, and you know, all the lab work that we work with the hospital. That's one of the great things of being We're at 36500 Euclid Avenue on the north end of the campus, and the hospital's at 36,000 Euclid Avenue. So they're right there, and we always try to look at collaborative initiatives instead of layering on cost. And if there's any way to do that, always building efficiency is something that's imperative. And
that hospital, they have their own pharmacy, correct?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah. Yep. It was wonderful to be with you all. I mean that truthfully.